Yeah. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to our little show. We've got the coolest fucking audience out there, guys. Welcome back. It is so good to be doing this video. This is the Voice of Reason, my co-host, if you don't know.
Hello there.
Voice of Reason and I were thinking, shouldn't we talk a little bit more about the other Halloween films before we continue to pontificate about Halloween Ends? It's like 3 months away. You know, we still have a lot to talk about. We
got to dig into the well.
Yeah, let's go to the well a little bit. So I want to talk about something that a lot of people say, that Halloween 5 damaged the franchise. That up until Halloween 5... Well, nobody liked Halloween 3 at the time, right? Because it didn't have Michael, and even though that movie's gone on to be really beloved, at the time, 3 was not really hitting home either. But a lot of people would say, and I agree, that Halloween 4 really resurrected the franchise very well.
No pun intended.
And but then came Halloween 5, and that's where things got really divisive again. So I remember Dave McRae, he's got a great channel. He was saying this once. He said, in his opinion, 5 is what really hurt the franchise a lot. And I know a lot of people agree with that. And then there's people like me who, you know, I can say it's the right answer either way. Okay. I can totally see someone thinking that. In many ways, I do think it lowered the bar. But in other ways, you know, they had this really eccentric director, this fucking weirdo was directing this movie. And he had all these goofy ass ideas, and it doesn't fit in with the other films, right? Like it does not in any way. And we're going to go down the list here in a second. But before we do, I would say it doesn't even try to compare to some of the creepiness of the first film.
Yeah.
And even the suspense in the fourth film, it doesn't happen here. But they did get some things really right. And I think for a fifth entry into a franchise, especially back then when there weren't a whole lot of part 5s, I got to give them credit that overall, I think the movie, you know, did pretty well. So let's get into my list. You want to talk about my list?
I do. Yes.
All right, let's get into this. Before we get into it all, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're so glad to have you all here for the ride. And of course, comment. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
We're not just here so Voice of Reason and I can bullshit. We want you guys to bullshit too. Take your platform. Let us know your thoughts. That's important.
The beauty of our conversation.
I do get such a kick out of the comments section.
Yeah.
Because we've got really creative people and stuff, and it's fun.
We do, for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So anyway, all right. So let's talk about the mask first. The mask was horribly done in this film.
Yeah.
It's hanging out of his fucking... You know how like when you're a kid and you got to go to church and you can't have like your shirt hanging out or your collar fucked up? Yeah. Michael has only got one thing to be concerned about, and that's his mask. And he didn't even bother to get the mask right. It's like hanging out. It's not tucked in. It looks ridiculous. There are moments of the movie where I feel like what are they? This looks so silly. Yeah. Why did they allow this to go on? Again, weird fucking director. You had a madman calling the shots.
Yeah.
So he must have thought that was cool, or he didn't notice. I also heard that he didn't really listen to other people very well. So I could imagine like little Jamie, you know, was like, before we do the next take, shouldn't Michael tuck in his mask? And the guy's probably like, the director was his Frenchman, I think. And he's like, no, there's no reason to do that. No, Michael looks great the way he is. I can't do a good accent, but you get the idea. I think I would imagine that everybody was saying, hey, this is dumb. And the guy didn't care. All right, the mask looks weird. Let's talk about the very intro to the movie. This was, to me, a little more kind of like sci-fi. And that's a weird thing to say, or sci-fi or fantasy, in the way they went to such great lengths to explain why Michael could be alive a year later after Halloween 4.
Yeah.
They went through really weird lengths to explain this whole thing as if you needed to explain it, like we needed that kind of logic all of a sudden. Halloween 4, there was very little explanation. Just Michael was dead. All of a sudden he wasn't. he got up in the ambulance. He whatever the fuck. He jumps up. He grabs the guy's face. It's like you just kind of went, all right, who cares? We don't really need to know why. It's cool. And the movie was on. It was exciting, right?
He comes alive in the ambulance a lot.
Yeah, that's not a good place for Michael.
Yeah, or some kind of transportation.
Yeah. You know, it's like you put me in the subway in New York. I get nutty there too. I've been very tired walking to the subway, and then I get into the subway, and I'm just like, hey! You know, I just come alive and die, that motherfucker. I don't know why. It's all the piss smell and you know, all the crimes that go on there. Something really brings out something in me. Anyway, Halloween 5. You know, really did it felt the need to have this big long intro, and you know, this explanation as to how this like medicine man kind of guy healed Michael, and then Michael paid him back by killing him. Yeah. I don't know. It was
what was he thinking?
It was a little too much out of the pages of a comic book. And I liked it in some way. Again, I find this movie very odd because there are things that I think are cheesy and stupid, and yet I kind of enjoy watching them. So I'm kind of in between here on this film.
Like a guilty pleasure.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't really believe in guilty pleasures. I think if you like something, you like it and just own it.
I don't think you believe in guilt.
Yeah, I don't. But I think that intro was odd. I mean, you needed to explain something, but to give us... Look, it still didn't explain much because you got this guy who somehow is healing Michael. Michael's really not a regular human.
Right.
And then Michael kills him. Yeah. But we've seen Michael show pity on people before. Like on kids, he's shown some pity. So I thought it was odd that, like, why wouldn't you show pity on the guy who just helped you? It was weird. The one good thing about the intro, though, the one really good thing I thought was that it made me think throughout the film, whenever we see those boots, you know, those boots are made for walking. Whenever we saw that mystery guy, I kept thinking it was maybe in some way connected to the introduction. I know it doesn't make much sense because the dude was killed in the beginning, but I just kind of thought it might have had something to do with that. Maybe it's someone who's been following Michael ever since. I don't know. I'm a weird guy.
Yeah,
that's
that was weird.
Right?
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, well, maybe it ties into what we saw. Maybe that's why the intro was kind of more explanatory than you'd expect out of a horror movie, you know? Anyway, all right. So that was another thought. Now, the suspense in this film, as I mentioned earlier, not great suspense. There were times that Michael's just there. And usually, like in the first film, and I think even the second and the fourth, it's like you see Michael from afar, and then he's a little closer, and then he's gone, and then he's back. This movie was just like, at one point, someone turned their head and just there he is. And they're like, Michael, how dare... I think it was Loomis. Was like, all of a sudden, there's Michael. and there was no real setup and no anything. And it feels very B-movie-ish to me. That we just had other movies that really nailed suspense. Now, this one didn't even try. There's a few times in the film like that where just all of a sudden there's Michael and he's killing and there you go. Yeah. So not the greatest. I do feel like this was a real departure from the other films in that way. The other films, even 4, which came right before it, was so like episode 4. Halloween 4, the whole intro was so set up to be creepy and very Halloween feeling. And this movie didn't really try to do that very much. So did it hurt the franchise? Quite possibly. I've already given you a few reasons. I'm going to give you a few more. The killing off of Rachel so early in the film. Yeah. Did you expect that at all? No. It not only was unsuspenseful, but all of a sudden he killed off someone who survived the entire 4th film. Right. And I really thought she would make it to the end. Yeah. And also there was no suspense there. Either it was just kind of done very quickly and it just really was poor. And also the really weird part was that not only did they kill her off early, they essentially just put Tina, who had never even been mentioned in the 4th film. There was no mention whatsoever to a dear friend named Tina who they love, right? Yeah. But Tina was so basically replacing Rachel in this film. Yeah. They just gave the Tina role. Like Jamie loved Tina like a sister. They were super close, even though a year ago, where the hell was she? You know, there was no mention of her in the 4th film. Now all of a sudden she really takes the place of, you know, she wasn't the final girl, but she was there for a lot more of the film than Rachel. And I thought that was weird. And speaking of Tina, what a fucking weirdo, huh? I bet Tina was based on the girlfriend of the director. I was just going to say. Because he is eccentric and so is Tina. Yeah. Audiences did not like Tina at all. I found her to be very irritating. Yeah. But not to the point where I couldn't tolerate her in the film. I could tolerate her enough. And I could see them wanting to do something different by having her and not Rachel, so it didn't repeat the 4th film too much. Yeah. Okay, I get it. You didn't want to totally repeat the 4th film with the same people. You kill off Rachel, you bring in Tina. I guess. But the other problem with Tina was that she's also very reminiscent of a lot of other horror films. Like she felt like to me like she belonged more in a Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah. You know? Oh, you're just gonna have to come and get me. Yeah. At one point, like Jamie is pleading with her. She's like, please, just stay with me. Yeah. And Tina's like, sorry, little girl, you'll understand when you're older. I gotta go get some dick. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, and my God. There were so many things that made me just think, what the fuck? What are we doing with this character? Yeah. But
there's one in every movie.
But see, that's the beauty about this franchise. There wasn't one in the first film. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they kind of did. They had people who were arrogant. They didn't have anything like this. So, and finally, another complaint. Michael's house at the end of the film why is it so gothic? It doesn't look anything like the first house. The director just didn't give a fuck.
Michael was redecorating.
I guess. They
made it... finding himself.
It did not feel like the house that we've seen in the past. It had a weird gothic kind of vibe to it. It looked very different on the outside. It's all fucked up. Not good. I didn't like any of that. Also, there was that Howard Sternish kind of character who I think they actually tried to get Stern to do the movie. And he said no. So then they got that guy to play the whole thing they were broadcasting, and then the guy's just like a total ass. And I don't know. That cheapened the franchise a little bit to me, because to me it felt like an obvious call out to a lot of mainstream stuff that the other films ignored. The other films were almost timeless in the way that, you know, the year they happened in, but it didn't really matter. Yeah. You know, and here it was more like, this was more like almost a period piece sometimes. Yeah. And you don't expect that from Halloween, but
putting that in there really anchors it to that time in history.
To that era, decade. Yeah. So there's definitely things that I think could have been a lot better, and that did really bring down the franchise and damage it. On the other hand, if you were a kid like I was and you saw this movie at a relatively young age, you didn't really notice all those differences. And in fact, it was almost kind of cool to have this feel a little bit different than some of the others. You know, it's a different feeling kind of movie. And I think in that way, it was nice to have something that didn't, it wasn't really as predictable as the other films.
It sure wasn't.
And it did have a big ending, didn't it? I love the ending of this film. Once we do a formal review, we'll talk more about those things. But I do think the ending of the movie was really quite good. It made up for a lot of
Did it save the movie, though?
For me, yeah. But again, I saw it as a kid, and it's different. You can't unsee it as a kid. So now as a fucking middle-aged dude, when I watch it, it's got kind of a place in my heart that it wouldn't normally have had. You know what I mean? The quality's not really there. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like when I talk to young people and they're like, you know, my favorite Maiden album is the new Iron Maiden. I'm like, really? You like the new one? What the fuck? There's a part of me that's like, what are you talking about? And then I realized that, like, well, they're just discovering it. So anyway, I was probably a bit like that at the time. So anyway, guys, again, comment. We want to know, what do you think? Did Halloween 5 damage the franchise? Look, we all know it did a little, but did it really do significant damage where people just said, fuck this, we're not coming back? You know, that's what I want to know. Voice of Reason, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, clearly it didn't damage it to the point that people didn't want to come back, because here we all still are.
Well, but not for a while, because it was like years later before they got 6 out. Yeah. 6 did. Curse of Michael Myers didn't make a lot of money, and then when they got H2O, well, H2O did really well, but I think what I'm saying is it damaged the franchise potentially. Halloween 5 did, but then they needed to pull some stunts to get people back. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So it wasn't permanent damage, but it was damage nonetheless.
Gotcha.
All right. Okay. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for another great video. Thank you for all the support. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And again, we'll see you in the comments. Bye, guys.